You're a disgrace to this family, my sister snapped at Christmas. Cousin Sarah added, finally, someone said it. I calmly replied, I understand. Then Dad's colleague asked, is your daughter really Forbes' youngest billionaire? Silence fell immediately. My sister's voice, sharp as broken glass, cut right through me, you're becoming an embarrassment to this family. I just looked at her, then my dad, and said, I understand. But really, I knew my whole world was about to explode into theirs. The crystal chandelier in my mother, Clara's, dining room cast harsh, accusing shadows across the mahogany table. 23 relatives, crammed into a space meant for half that, created a deafening chorus of what they called concern and what I knew was pure judgment. Isabel, my older sister, sat at the head, next to her husband, Daniel. They radiated that smug superiority earned from following every single rule life laid out. I'd driven 6 hours from Philadelphia for this annual disaster. My beat-up Honda Civic looked pathetic next to the Mercedes and BMWs lining the circular driveway. At 28, I was the family disappointment, the cautionary tale whispered at holiday parties. Isabel practiced corporate law at a prestigious firm downtown, while I'd dropped out of my MBA program 3 years ago to chase what everyone dismissively called that ridiculous tech thing. Chloe's still messing with her little project, Clara announced to the table, her tone dripping with the clear implication I was finger painting, not actually building a company. She passed the potatoes with the same practiced, dismissive gesture she'd perfected over years. My cousin Emily leaned forward, her diamond tennis bracelet glinting. How's that going? Are you making any money yet? The way she stretched any made it clear she already knew the answer. I stabbed at my green beans. It's progressing. Progressing? Uncle Robert repeated, exchanging a knowing look with his wife, Grace. That's one way to describe unemployment. My father, David Monroe, cleared his throat from the opposite end. He'd built a successful accounting firm over 3 decades, and my failure to launch clearly nodded him. Chloe's exploring her options. Isn't that right, honey? The condescension in his voice stung worse than any outright criticism. Isabel set down her wineglass with deliberate, icy care. We're all worried about you, Chloe. You're almost 30. Most people your age have established careers, retirement accounts, mortgage payments. What do you have? I met her gaze. She'd always been the golden child, perfect grades, perfect husband, perfect 2-story colonial in the suburbs. She'd followed the blueprint exactly and couldn't fathom why anyone would stray. I have a vision, I said quietly. A vision doesn't pay bills, Daniel interjected, naturally, since he worked in finance. I could get you an interview at my firm, entry level, but it's something. Better than whatever you're doing now. Aunt Grace spoke up from the middle of the table. My neighbor's daughter works at Target. They have excellent benefits. I could put in a word. The suggestions came rapid fire after that. Starbucks was hiring. The grocery store needed night managers. Had I considered going back to school? Maybe teaching? Something stable, something normal, something that would stop embarrassing them at their country club. I just pushed food around my plate, letting their words wash over me. 3 years of 16-hour days, maxed-out credit cards, and ramen dinners had led to this. They had no idea what I'd built in my cramped Philadelphia apartment, the algorithms, the partnerships, the quiet meetings with venture capitalists who actually understood my vision. You're becoming an embarrassment to this family, Isabel announced again, just as the chatter died. She scanned the table, gathering support like a prosecutor before a jury. I'm sorry, but someone needs to say it. We can't keep making excuses for you. Emily nodded vigorously. Finally, someone said it. We're all thinking it. Clara's face had gone pale, but she didn't contradict Isabel. Dad studied his plate with intense focus. Uncle Robert cleared his throat in agreement. Aunt Grace looked sympathetic but stayed silent. The weight of their collective disappointment pressed down on me like a physical thing. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Every instinct screamed to defend myself, to tell them everything, to wipe that smugness off Isabel's face. But I'd learned patience these past 3 years. I'd learned that timing mattered. I understand, I said simply. The conversation shifted after that, flowing to Daniel's promotion, Emily's vacation to Maui, Uncle Robert's new boat. I became invisible again, which suited me fine. I helped Mom clear dishes, listening to her gentle suggestions about a more traditional path. I hugged everyone goodbye, promising to visit more often, knowing full well I wouldn't. The drive back to Philadelphia felt even longer. Snow began falling, making the highway treacherous. My phone buzzed repeatedly in the cup holder, but I ignored it. Whatever fires needed putting out at the office could wait. My apartment was freezing when I arrived near midnight. The heat had gone out again, and my landlord wouldn't fix it until Monday. I wrapped myself in blankets and finally checked my messages, 47 texts, 23 missed calls, 14 emails marked urgent. The Forbes article had dropped at 6 p.m., right when we'd been sitting down to dinner. Forbes names Chloe Monroe, 28, as youngest self-made billionaire in tech industry. The headline glowed on my phone screen. Below it, a professionally shot photo of me in front of my company's new headquarters in Newark. The article detailed how my data analytics platform had revolutionized healthcare management, how 3 Fortune 500 companies had bought enterprise licenses in 6 months, how the recent Series C funding had valued my company at $3.2 billion. My 60% stake, unusually high because I'd bootstrapped for 2 years and negotiated fiercely to maintain control, made me worth just over $2 billion on paper. I'd known the article was coming. Forbes had interviewed me 6 weeks ago, but I'd signed NDAs preventing me from discussing it. The timing was pure coincidence, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't appreciate the irony. My phone rang. Leo Finch, my chief financial officer, who'd joined in the early days for equity when I couldn't afford his salary, sounded breathless. "Have you seen the traffic? Our website's getting hammered. Thousands of demo requests. CNBC wants you on tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow's Saturday," I pointed out. "They're doing a special segment. Bloomberg called too. And the Wall Street Journal. Chloe, this is insane. We're trending #1 on Twitter." I asked him to handle the media requests and hung up. Sleep seemed impossible, so I made tea and watched the reactions roll in, my company's stock value, my personal worth, the speculation, the inevitable criticism that I'd gotten lucky, had secret funding, or an inflated valuation. The first family text arrived at 7 a.m. Saturday. "Uncle Robert saw the Forbes article. Congratulations. We always knew you had it in you. Then Aunt Grace, so proud of you, sweetie. Remember when I suggested those other jobs? I was only trying to help. Cousin Emily, oh my God, can't believe you didn't tell us. We're family." Messages poured in all morning. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered how close we'd been. People who'd suggested Target now recalled always believing in my vision. The rewriting of history happened in real time. Isabel didn't text. Neither did Clara or David. I spent Saturday doing damage control. The CNBC interview went smoothly. My responses were measured, professional, focused on the company, not personal details. When they asked about my background, I mentioned dropping out of business school, and the interviewer nearly gasped. "You left Harvard's MBA program to build this in your apartment?" "It seemed like the right move at the time," I said simply. Sunday afternoon, Dad called. His voice sounded strained. "Chloe, we need to talk." "About what?" He exhaled slowly. "A colleague called me yesterday. William Harrison from the firm. He asked if my daughter was really the Forbes billionaire. I told him there must be some mistake." He paused. "Then I Googled you. Chloe, why didn't you tell us?" He sounded genuinely confused, as though my silence was the strange part. Would you have believed me? I asked. If I'd shown up at Thanksgiving last year and said I was building a billion-dollar company, what would you have said? The silence stretched. Your mother wants to talk, he said finally. Clara's voice came on the line, tight with emotion. Sweetheart, we're so proud of you. We always have been. You know that, right? Do I? Of course, we worried because we love you. Parents worry. That's what we do. She was already reframing it, turning their contempt into concern, their judgment into love. Is Isabel there? I asked. She's processing. You have to understand, this is a lot to take in. She's been working so hard at her firm and now. Clara caught herself. What I mean is, we're all adjusting to this news. Dad got back on the line. Several people from my firm have reached out. They're interested in your services. I told them I'd make introductions. There it was. The pivot from embarrassment to opportunity, from liability to asset. I was no longer the family failure. I was a networking opportunity, a status symbol, a name to drop at dinner parties. I'll have my business development team reach out, I said. Chloe, about Christmas. Your sister was under a lot of stress. She didn't mean, she meant every word, I interrupted. And that's fine. I understand. Please don't be like this, Clara pleaded. We're a family. I thought about that word. Family. The people who should have your back, who should believe in you even when the odds look impossible. The people who'd spent 3 years suggesting retail jobs. I need to go, I said. Media requests. Monday brought another wave of calls. Isabel left a voicemail around noon. Her voice had lost its usual confidence. Chloe. It's me. Look, we should talk. I know things got heated at Christmas, but I was just trying to help. You know how I worry about you. Call me back, okay? We need to discuss some things. Daniel has some investment ideas he'd like to run by you. I deleted it. Tuesday morning, I met with my executive team at our Newark headquarters. The building was glass and steel, state-of-the-art, a far cry from the apartment where this had all started. My assistant brought coffee while Leo walked through the explosion of interest. 17 new enterprise inquiries, he reported, including 2 of the biggest hospital networks in the country. Morgan Stanley wants a meeting. Goldman Sachs is circling. Everyone wants a piece. Maria, my chief operating officer, looked up from her laptop. We also have 83 interview requests, including one from Oprah's people. Oprah? I set down my coffee. Apparently, you're inspiring, Maria smirked. Young woman, no connections, builds empire from nothing. It's a good story. It's not nothing, I corrected. It's algorithms and analysis and 3 years of work. That doesn't sound as good in a headline, Leo pointed out. He wasn't wrong. The media had latched onto the rags to riches narrative, conveniently ignoring my Harvard pedigree and upper-middle-class upbringing. I had advantages. I'd also had people who should have supported me call me an embarrassment. My phone buzzed. Another text from Isabel, please call me. This is important. Family shouldn't let business come between them. The audacity was almost impressive. That evening, I attended a dinner with my board of directors at a restaurant in Philadelphia's Back Bay. The conversation flowed around venture capital, market projections, expansion strategies. These people knew my worth before Forbes announced it. They'd seen the raw data, understood the algorithms, recognized the potential when it was still theoretical. You're handling the attention well, remarked Eleanor Vance, one of my earliest angel investors. She'd written a check for $2 million when I had nothing but code and conviction. Some founders let success derail them. You seem remarkably grounded. I had good practice staying focused, I said. The past 3 years taught me to block out noise. Eleanor smiled knowingly. She'd been one of the few who'd met my family during early fundraising, witnessing my mother's barely concealed skepticism over an awkward brunch. Family coming around now like moths to a flame, I presume? She asked. Let me guess. Investment opportunities, business proposals, sudden emergencies requiring financial assistance? All of the above, I sighed, swirling my wine. Plus several variations of "we always believed in you." The revision of history happens fast, Eleanor observed. People genuinely convinced themselves they were supportive all along. The human mind protects itself from uncomfortable truths. Arthur Sterling, my lead board member, leaned forward. Speaking from experience, Chloe, you need to establish boundaries now. Once family members sense financial opportunity, the requests never stop. They escalate. A loan becomes an investment. An investment becomes a partnership. Before you know it, you're funding your cousin's essential oil business. The table laughed, but Arthur's expression remained serious. I'm not joking. My brother-in-law pitched me a cryptocurrency scheme last month. We hadn't spoken in 5 years before I sold my last company. The dinner continued with war stories from successful entrepreneurs who'd navigated sudden wealth and the family complications that followed. Every person at the table had a variation of the same experience. The relatives who dismissed their ambitions suddenly became their biggest cheerleaders once success arrived. The thing is, Eleanor said as dessert arrived, they're not entirely wrong to be skeptical initially. Most startups fail. The statistics are brutal. From their perspective, they were being realistic. But family isn't supposed to be realistic, I countered. They're supposed to be supportive, even when the odds are terrible. Ideally, yes. Reality is more complicated. She set down her fork. Here's what I learned after my third exit: you can't punish people for being human. But you also don't owe them access to your life just because you share DNA. Finding the balance is the hard part. Her words stayed with me during the drive home. My brownstone felt cavernous and quiet. I'd bought it 6 months ago but hadn't fully moved in. Most nights, I still slept at my old apartment, surrounded by the memories of struggle and determination. My phone buzzed. Email had become overwhelming. My inbox contained 847 unread messages, many from people I'd known in various life phases. High school classmates who'd barely spoken to me wanted to reconnect. College acquaintances had exciting opportunities to discuss. Even my freshman year roommate, who'd once called my business idea cute, now wanted to grab coffee and pick my brain. One email stood out. The sender was Professor Alan Miller, a professor from Harvard who'd tried to talk me out of leaving the MBA program. His message was brief: Chloe, I was wrong. Your instincts were better than my experience. Congratulations on proving that. Sincerely, Alan. I stared at those words for several minutes. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't asking for anything. He was simply acknowledging his mistake. I hit reply. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. My phone rang. An unknown Philadelphia number. I almost didn't answer. Chloe Monroe? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Sophia Hayes from the Philadelphia Herald. We're running a feature on local tech success stories. I'd love to interview you about your journey, particularly the Harvard dropout angle. Our readers find that inspiring. I'll have my public relations team reach out, I said automatically. Actually, I was hoping to get some personal perspective. Family background, early struggles, that sort of thing. The human interest angle. She paused. I've already spoken with your mother. She had some wonderful stories about your childhood ambitions. My grip tightened on the phone. You spoke with my mother? Yes. She was very forthcoming. Talked about how the family always knew you were destined for greatness. How she encouraged her interest in technology from a young age. Really touching stuff. The rewriting of history had gone public. I'm going to stop you there, I said. Anything my mother told you is her perspective, not objective fact. If you're writing about my journey, you need to understand that my family did not support my decision to leave Harvard. They actively discouraged it. For 3 years, they considered me a failure. Silence on the other end. Then, that's not what your mother said. I'm sure it isn't. But if you print her version, I'll go on record contradicting it. Your choice which narrative you prefer, but one of them is actually true. Sophia's tone shifted, becoming more interested. This sounds like there's a bigger story here. There's not. There's just the truth versus what people wish had happened. Use your judgment. I ended the call. Within an hour, Clara called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. On the 4th attempt, I answered. What were you thinking? Her voice was shrill with panic. That reporter called me back. She's asking all sorts of questions now about family dynamics and whether we were supportive. You're making us look terrible. I'm not making you look like anything. I'm simply not letting you rewrite history for public consumption. This is humiliating, Chloe. She asked if we really suggested you work at Target. Where would she get an idea like that? From me. Because it happened. Aunt Grace said it at Christmas dinner. You were sitting right there. That was taken out of context. She was just trying to help. No, I interrupted. We're not doing this. You don't get to spin the narrative now that it's inconvenient. You spent 3 years treating my choices with contempt. Own it or don't, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen so you can look good in the newspaper. You're being vindictive. I'm being honest. There's a difference. Dad took the phone. Chloe, you need to think about how this reflects on the family. Your mother has a reputation in this community. We have friends, colleagues, social standing. You're jeopardizing that. Then maybe you should have thought about that before calling me an embarrassment. I never said that. That was Isabel. You didn't contradict her. 23 people heard her say it, and not one person defended me. You sat there and studied your plate like it was the most fascinating thing you'd ever seen. His breathing grew heavy. What do you want from us, Chloe? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We made mistakes. But this vindictive streak isn't like you. You don't know what's like me, I said quietly. You never bothered to find out. I hung up before he could respond. The Philadelphia Herald article ran a week later. Sophia Hayes had done her homework. The piece detailed my journey accurately, including the family skepticism and the Christmas dinner confrontation. She'd even tracked down Uncle Robert, who'd uncomfortably confirmed that concern about my choices had been expressed. The article's headline read, From Family Disappointment to Forbes Billionaire, Chloe Monroe's Unlikely Journey. It went viral. Within 24 hours, I was trending on Twitter. People shared their own stories of family members who doubted them. The narrative resonated. Supportive messages flooded my company email. Other entrepreneurs reached out with solidarity. A surprising number of people had experienced similar dynamics. But the backlash against my family was harsh. Clara's social media accounts got bombarded with criticism. People called them unsupportive and short-sighted. Dad's accounting firm received negative reviews from people who had never been clients. Isabel's law firm LinkedIn page filled with comments about judging people prematurely. Part of me felt satisfied. A larger part felt guilty. Leo appeared in my office doorway Tuesday afternoon. Have you seen the response to the Herald article? Hard to miss. Your family is getting destroyed online. There's a change.org petition demanding your sister apologize publicly. It has 15,000 signatures. He sat down. This is getting out of hand. I didn't start this. No, but you could end it. One statement asking people to leave your family alone would calm things down. I considered it. The vindictive part of me wanted to let them suffer the consequences. But Leo was right. This had escalated beyond reasonable accountability. I drafted a statement and posted it on the company blog. While I appreciate the support I've received, I ask that people respect my family's privacy. Family dynamics are complicated. We all make mistakes. The focus should remain on the work we're doing to revolutionize healthcare analytics, not on personal matters. It helped somewhat. The harassment decreased but didn't disappear entirely. Internet outrage has its own momentum, immune to reason or requests for moderation. Clara called that evening. Thank you for the statement. Things were getting frightening. People were showing up at the house. I'm sorry that happened. Are you? Her voice carried an edge. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To humiliate us publicly. To punish us for not being perfect. I didn't want any of this. I wanted you to believe in me 3 years ago. That's all I ever wanted. We're not mind readers, Chloe. You shut us out completely. How are we supposed to support something we didn't understand? You could have asked questions instead of making assumptions. You could have trusted that I knew what I was doing. You could have believed in me even when it didn't make sense. My voice cracked slightly. Instead, you spent 3 years looking at me like I was a cautionary tale. Because we were scared. Clara said, her voice breaking. We watched you throw away opportunities and refused to explain why. We saw you struggling financially and wouldn't let us help. What were we supposed to think? That I was capable? That I had a plan? That your daughter might actually know what she's doing? The conversation ended without resolution, as most of our recent conversations did. We were trapped in a loop of hurt and misunderstanding, each side convinced the other was being unreasonable. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. I was reviewing code when my assistant knocked. There's an Isabel Monroe here to see you. She says she's your sister. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. I glanced at the clock, 3 p.m. She must have driven up from Virginia. Send her in. Isabel entered wearing what I recognized as her power suit, the navy one she wore to important meetings. Her makeup was perfect, her hair styled precisely. She looked like she was preparing for battle. Nice office, she said, glancing around the minimalist decor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Charles River. My degrees hung on one wall next to patent certificates for my algorithms. Very impressive. Did you come here to compliment my interior design? She sat down without being invited. We need to clear the air. What happened at Christmas? I feel terrible about it. I was stressed with work and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. I leaned back in my chair. You said I was an embarrassment to the family. I was worried about you, she insisted. We all were. You have to understand how it looked from our perspective. You dropped out of Harvard. You were living in that tiny apartment. You wouldn't tell us what you were working on. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to trust me. How could we trust you when you wouldn't communicate? Her voice rose slightly. You shut us out completely. If you just explained what you were building, would you have believed me? I asked the same question I'd asked Dad. If I told you I was developing revolutionary healthcare analytics software, would you have said, "Good for you, Chloe"? Or would you have suggested I get a job at Starbucks? She looked away. That's not fair. Isn't it? Be honest with yourself, Isabel. You made your judgment about my choices and my worth based on what you could see, which was nothing. The moment you found out I was successful, your entire attitude changed. Don't pretend this is about communication. Fine. She straightened her shoulders. You're right. I didn't take you seriously. Neither did Mom or Dad or anyone else. We were wrong. I'm apologizing. What more do you want? Nothing, I said honestly. I don't want anything from you. Don't be like that. We're sisters. She shifted in her chair, and I recognized the tell. This was the moment she'd been building toward. Actually, Daniel and I have been discussing some opportunities. He works with high-net-worth individuals on portfolio diversification. Given your recent windfall, we thought, no. You haven't even heard the pitch. I don't need to. I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. I have financial advisors. I have wealth managers. I have an entire team dedicated to making smart decisions with my company's money and my personal assets. What I don't have is family members who supported me when I had nothing. Isabel stood too. That's what this is about. You're punishing us for not believing in you. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply maintaining the same relationship we've always had. You didn't care about my life when I was broke. I don't need you in it now that I'm not. Her face flushed. Mom said you'd be difficult about this. She said success would go to your head. I almost laughed. Of course she did. Tell me, when did she say that? Before or after she told everyone at her country club that she always knew I'd be successful? You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. I walked to the door and opened it. I have a 4 o'clock meeting. My assistant can validate your parking. She gathered her purse with sharp, angry movements. You know what? Maybe we were right about you. Maybe you are an embarrassment. Not because you're poor, but because success has turned you into someone bitter and petty. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I just learned who people really are when the masks come off. She left without another word. I watched her stride through the office, past the rows of developers and analysts who'd believed in my vision when no one else did. These people had worked for equity and promises. Had put in 18-hour days for a dream that everyone else called foolish. My assistant appeared in the doorway. You okay? Yeah, I returned to my desk. I'm good. The rest of the week brought more of the same. Relatives I barely knew reached out with business proposals, investment opportunities, and requests for loans. Uncle Robert wanted me to fund his boat renovation. Cousin Emily needed help with her daughter's college tuition. Aunt Grace's husband was starting a business and needed angel investors. Every single person who'd spent years watching me struggle now needed something. I declined them all politely. Clara called Friday evening. We're planning a family dinner, a proper celebration of your success. Everyone wants to be there. I'm busy. Chloe, please. We're trying. Her voice cracked slightly. I know we hurt you. I know we didn't handle things well, but we're still your family. That has to count for something. Does it? I asked. Because for 3 years, being family meant watching you all look at me with pity and disappointment. It meant listening to suggestions that I give up and get a normal job. It meant being called an embarrassment at Christmas dinner while 20 people nodded in agreement. So, forgive me if I'm not eager to. rush back into that dynamic. We were scared for you, Clara said quietly. We couldn't understand what you were doing or why you were so secretive about it. From our perspective, you'd thrown away a Harvard MBA to work on something you refused to explain. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to believe in me anyway. My voice came out harder than I intended. That's what family does. They believe in you even when they don't understand. They support you even when it looks crazy. They don't wait until Forbes validates your choices to decide you were worth supporting all along. That's not fair. Life rarely is. The silence stretched between us. Finally, Clara spoke again. Your father's colleagues have been talking about how his daughter is this tech prodigy, but she won't take his calls. It's embarrassing for him. There was that word again, embarrassing. I'm sorry Dad's embarrassed, I said. Truly. But that's his problem, not mine. When did you become so cold? Around the same time you all decided I was a failure. Funny how that works. I ended the call before she could respond. Saturday brought an unexpected email. Isabel had written a 5-paragraph essay about family values, forgiveness, and the importance of not letting money change relationships. The irony was apparently lost on her. I deleted it without responding. Sunday morning, I drove to my old apartment in Philadelphia. I kept the lease even after buying a brownstone in Back Bay. Something about maintaining the space where it all started felt important. The heat still didn't work properly. The refrigerator still made concerning noises. The view still showed nothing but other apartment buildings and a sliver of gray sky. I sat at the desk where I'd written the first lines of code 3 years ago, where I'd cried out of frustration and exhaustion more times than I could count, where I'd eaten ramen and questioned every decision while my family suggested retail jobs. My phone buzzed. Another text from cousin Emily, "Hey, long time no talk. We should grab coffee soon and catch up." I turned off my phone. 3 months passed. The company continued growing. We secured 2 major contracts worth $400 million in annual recurring revenue combined. I hired 200 more employees. Forbes did a follow-up article. TechCrunch called me one of the most influential people in healthcare technology. My family's attempts to contact me gradually decreased. Clara still called once a week, leaving voicemails I rarely returned. Dad sent occasional emails about firm business, always including a personal line at the end. Isabel stopped reaching out entirely. I didn't miss them. That was the part that surprised me most. I'd expected to feel guilty or sad or something other than this quiet relief. Instead, I felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of their expectations and disappointments. My real family had revealed itself over the past 3 years: Leo, who'd left a 6-figure job at Google to be my chief financial officer; Maria, my chief operating officer, who believed in the vision when it was still just PowerPoint slides; the developers who'd worked for equity when I couldn't afford salaries; the investors who'd taken a chance on a Harvard dropout with a crazy idea. These were the people who'd seen me at my worst and stayed anyway. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant knocked. "Your mother is here. She's asking to see you." I glanced at my calendar. I don't have anything scheduled. She knows. She's asking for 5 minutes. I considered sending her away. Then curiosity won. Okay. Clara looked smaller than I remembered. She'd lost weight, and her hair had more gray. She sat across from me in the same chair Isabel had occupied months earlier. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. I waited. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm not here to pitch a business idea or request money. I'm here because you're my daughter and I miss you. Her hands twisted in her lap. I've made mistakes. We all have. We judged you unfairly. We didn't support you when you needed us. We let our fear and misunderstanding turn into cruelty. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm just asking you to understand that we did those things out of love, even if it came out all wrong. Love, I repeated. Is that what you call it? We were scared. We watched you throw away opportunities we would have killed for. We couldn't understand why. And instead of asking, instead of trusting, we assumed the worst. That was wrong. I was wrong. She looked directly at me. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because you became successful, but because I didn't believe in you when you needed me, too. I studied her face for signs of manipulation, for the angle, for whatever she really wanted. But she just looked tired and sad and genuinely regretful. I appreciate you saying that, I said finally. But it doesn't change anything. I know. She stood up. I just needed you to hear it. Not because I expect forgiveness, but because you deserved to hear it 3 years ago. She walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you built and how you built it. And I'm sorry I waited until everyone else told me to be proud before I figured it out myself. She left before I could respond. I sat at my desk for a long time after that, staring at the river and thinking about family and forgiveness and whether the two could ever really coexist after fundamental trust had been broken. The following week brought a development I hadn't anticipated. I was reviewing partnership agreements when my assistant buzzed. There's a David Monroe here asking to see you. He says he's your father and that it's urgent. I hadn't expected Dad to make the trip from Virginia. He stood when I entered the reception area, looking uncomfortable in his business suit. His hair had grayed since I'd last seen him. I had a client meeting in town, he said. Thought I'd stop by afterward. I led him to my office without comment. He took in the space with the analytical eye he'd honed over decades in accounting. His gaze lingered on the patent certificates, the awards, the photographs of the team at various company milestones. You've built something remarkable here. Thank you. I've been reading about your algorithms. The healthcare applications are genuinely innovative. I showed the technical papers to a colleague who specializes in medical practice accounting. He was impressed by the cost reduction projections. Dad settled into the chair across from my desk. I wish you'd explained it to us like that. In terms we could understand. I tried, I said. Multiple times. Remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? I brought a presentation breaking down the market opportunity and the technical approach. Mom said it was too complicated and changed the subject to Isabel's vacation plans. He winced. I don't remember that. I do. I remember everything. Every dismissive comment, every suggestion that I was wasting my time, every look that said I was disappointing you. I kept my voice level. You don't get to rewrite this, Dad. Not with me. I'm not trying to rewrite anything. I'm trying to understand where we went so wrong that my daughter won't speak to me. His voice roughened. Do you know what it's like to have colleagues congratulate me on your success while knowing you won't return my calls? To have people ask about you and realize I know less about your life than they learned from reading Forbes? Do you know what it was like to sit at Christmas dinner and hear my sister call me an embarrassment while my father said nothing? I countered. To spend 3 years working myself to exhaustion while my family suggested I apply to grocery stores? I was trying to protect you from failure. You were trying to protect yourself from the embarrassment of having a daughter who failed. There's a difference. The words hung between us, sharp and unavoidable. Dad looked at his hands, the same hands that had taught me to ride a bike and later signed my Harvard acceptance letter with visible pride. You're probably right, he admitted finally. I built my firm from nothing. It took years of 80-hour weeks and sacrifice. When you wanted to do something similar, I should have recognized it. But all I could see was the risk, the statistical improbability of success, the likelihood that you'd waste years on something that wouldn't work out. And when it did work out, when Forbes published that article, I felt proud and ashamed in equal measure. Proud of what you'd accomplished. Ashamed that I hadn't believed you could do it. He met my gaze. I'm here because I need you to know something. What we did to you was wrong. Not misguided or poorly expressed concern. It was wrong. We should have supported you regardless of whether we understood your choices. That's what parents do, and we failed. I hadn't expected such direct accountability. Most of my family's attempts at reconciliation had involved justifications and excuses. Dad was simply admitting fault. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. But I wanted you to have this. Inside was a check made out to my company for exactly $73,450. I looked up, confused. That's the amount you would have spent on your final year at Harvard, Dad explained. Tuition, room and board, everything. I calculated it precisely. You gave up that education to build your company. This is what it would have cost, adjusted for what you would have earned in a traditional career path during those 3 years. He gestured to the check. I can't give you back the support you needed, but I can acknowledge the sacrifice you made. My throat tightened. The gesture was so quintessentially Dad, precise, calculated, expressed through numbers rather than emotions, but the thought behind it was genuine. I don't need your money, I managed. I know. But I need to give it. Consider it payment for the MBA education you gave yourself. You earned a more valuable degree than Harvard could have provided. He stood. I won't take more of your time. I know you're busy. Dad. I stopped him at the door. Thank you for this. And for being honest. He nodded and left. I sat holding the check for a long time, understanding that some wounds might actually be capable of healing. The dynamic shifted after that conversation, not dramatically, but noticeably. Dad started sending occasional emails about accounting questions related to my business structure. I'd respond with answers, and we'd have brief professional exchanges that gradually incorporated personal elements. It wasn't the relationship we'd had before, but it was something. Clara remained more complicated. She'd taken the public criticism hard and seemed unable to move past it. Our conversations stayed brief and surface level. She'd ask about work in general terms, I'd give vague updates, and we'd end the call with promises to talk soon that neither of us kept with any urgency. Isabel didn't reach out again. Through family channels, I heard she had been promoted to partner at her firm. Daniel had started his own wealth management company. Their lives continued on their predetermined path, and mine continued on the one I carved out. 6 months after the Forbes article, I received an invitation to speak at Harvard Business School. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood in the same auditorium where I'd attended classes years earlier. 200 MBA students filled the seats, notebooks open, expressions eager. Most of you will follow the traditional path I began. You'll graduate, join consulting firms or investment banks, work your way up established corporate ladders. There's nothing wrong with that. It's safe, it's respected, and it offers clear markers of success. I clicked to the next slide, showing my company's growth trajectory. I didn't do that. I left this program with 1 semester remaining to build something everyone told me was impossible. My family thought I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Maybe I was. Maybe I just got lucky. But here's what I learned: the people who love you aren't always capable of supporting the risks you need to take. The students were taking notes frantically. I wondered how many would actually deviate from their planned paths, and how many would file this away as an interesting anecdote before accepting their Goldman Sachs offers. The hardest part wasn't the technical challenges or the fundraising or the 18-hour days, I continued. It was watching people I loved look at me with pity and disappointment. It was sitting at family dinners while relatives suggested I get a real job. It was knowing that the people who should have believed in me couldn't see past their own fear. A hand shot up. Young woman, front row, eager expression. How did you maintain confidence when everyone doubted you? I didn't always, I admit it. Some nights I'd sit in my apartment wondering if they were right. If I was delusional. If I should just quit and take the consulting job my brother-in-law kept offering. But then I'd look at the code I'd written, the problem I was solving, and I'd know. Not think, not hope, no. I knew. And I decided that my certainty mattered more than their doubt. Another hand. What about now? Did your family come around? Some did, some didn't. Some apologized genuinely. Some just wanted access to my success. I learned that family relationships are transactional more often than we'd like to admit. I paused. But I also learned that chosen family matters as much as biological family. The people who believed in me when I had nothing are the ones who matter now that I have something. The question and answer continued for another 45 minutes. Afterwards, several students approached with business cards and pitch decks. They all had the same hungry look I'd once seen in my own mirror. I took their information and made mental notes about which ones showed genuine promise versus which ones were chasing trends. Professor Alan Miller found me in the hallway after. That was powerful. And pointed. Was it too much? No, they needed to hear it. We sell them a vision of meritocracy and clear paths to success. We don't talk about the psychological toll of going against family expectations or social pressure. He smiled slightly. Though I suspect the administration will ask you to soften that message if you speak here again. Will there be a next time? Oh, definitely. You're exactly the kind of success story we want to claim, even if you didn't finish the program. His expression turned serious. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I tried to talk you out of leaving. I was looking at statistics and risk assessments. I should have been looking at you. You were doing your job. My job should have included recognizing exceptional talent and supporting it, even when it made unconventional choices. He shook my hand. Thank you for proving me wrong. It doesn't happen often enough. The drive back to Newark felt reflective. I thought about the students I'd just addressed, wondering how many would choose security over ambition. How many would let family pressure determine their paths? How many would have the courage to disappoint people temporarily in service of a long-term vision? My phone rang. Unknown Virginia number. I almost didn't answer. Chloe? A male voice, uncertain. It's Daniel. Isabel's husband. I pulled over. This was unexpected. Daniel, what can I do for you? I owe you an apology. He spoke quickly, as though he'd rehearsed this. That Christmas dinner, the things Isabel said, the things I agreed with, we were wrong. Completely, fundamentally wrong. I've wanted to call for months, but couldn't figure out what to say. Okay. I pulled up my email and started typing responses. Business continued. Life continued. The hurt would probably always exist somewhere in the background, a scar that never quite faded. But scars were proof of survival, and I'd survived just fine. Better than fine, actually. That Christmas, I spent the holiday in Bali with my executive team. We stayed at a resort overlooking the ocean and toasted to another successful year. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives I hadn't seen in a year. Isabel sent a card. Clara sent a text hoping I was well. I responded to Clara, having a wonderful time. Hope you're well, too. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was simply the truth. I was having a wonderful time building something meaningful with people who believed in me from the beginning. And that, I decided, was everything. What do you think? Was this the only way to find my own kind of family?